Welcome everybody to tonight's Friday Night at the Movies, continuing our tradition of having people talk about interesting cycling vacations they've taken. Today we have Monica Goll and Donal Burke, who are people I've ridden with in the club. I'm hoping many of you have as well. And they are going to share the story of their ride in South America, in Argentina and Chile. And apparently I get brownie points for pronouncing that properly. It ain't Chile. It ain't Chile, right? So I want to remind everybody that in order to manage things effectively, I will relay questions from the group chat. So please feel free to share commentary and questions. And then when they have a pause, a natural break, I'll put that out to them. So without further ado, we'll get started. I just want to remind everybody that next Wednesday, we're going to have Jim Zispine talking about, he's going to offer the first aid class that we teach all of our leaders to everyone. Because as you're riding alone or with one or two other people, if something were to happen, good for you all to kind of have that basic knowledge. So we hope you'll join us then. And we have in the works for a future, I may be shifting from Friday to Thursday night at the movies, but we may have, we're going to have someone talking about camping, riding and camping, and kind of carrying all your gear on the bike when you go. So that'll be hopefully, if not next Thursday, then the Thursday after. With that, I'm going to thank you very much, Monica and Donal. It's over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. And thank you for everybody who's taken time to join us this evening. This is our Chile, Argentina bike trip 2016.
So we know some of the people here, but we're not really keen cyclists, so we don't get out very often. So maybe some people haven't seen us on bicycles very much. We actually didn't manage to get out at all last year.
Weekend trips.
Weekend trips.
Yeah,
Yeah.
weekend trips.
So this trip, basically, this was our first bike trip abroad, and we wanted to go to South America. So we just did some searching on the web, looking for any trips that were available. And this is the one that caught our eye, was this one, which covered quite a large area of the Lake District, which kind of spans between Chile and Argentina. So you can see from the map, it's kind of just probably 3/4 way down Chile. And if I can get this to work. There we go. My buttons are giving up. So we started in Chile and basically crossed over the mountains, and so most of the trip involved lots of different forms of transport. So it was mostly cycling, but we were on boats, we were on buses, we did some hiking. It was kind of a variety of things involved, but and everything was organized. So we basically just turned up. The bikes were provided, all the accommodation, food, everything was laid on. So we just got there, got on the bikes, and followed the leader. We didn't have any preparation to do. So you can see from the map, we started in one spot, cycled over into Argentina, then cycled back into Chile again, and finished in Tambuco. We had 3 days where we stayed in one place, and then there were optional things to do on those kind of days off. One of the days was an organized cycling day where we just ended up back in the same place. The other 2 days we actually it was free to do whatever you wanted to do in those places. All of the other days were getting up early, cycling for a long time, arriving somewhere, and eating and drinking, and then repeating the same the next day. So we booked this trip. There was 16 other people, well, 16 people including us on the trip. Most of the people were British, so the tour company was a British-based company. So almost everybody else on the trip was from the UK. We got in. So the trip actually started on a Monday morning. We got there on Saturday, kind of Saturday afternoon. So we had a little bit of time to look around before we started. So this is, we arrived in Portimont, and then that's where the plane landed, and then we got a taxi down to Porto Varas, which basically is a holiday town. And when we got into the town center, there's lots of places, selling different trips. There's, hiking, boat trips, fishing, you name it, you can do it there. So it's quite a kind of bustling town. So this picture is when we were walking on the way in. It was a museum, and we just thought that the outside was kind of interesting, an unusual building. Again, this is on the way into the town. A large chess set. And this is a very common sight throughout the whole holiday. Basically, we didn't go anywhere where you couldn't see a snow-capped volcano. That whole area is just littered with like really big mountains and volcanoes. So this is from the town we were in. Is basically like looking across the lake, and you can see one of the nearby volcanoes. One of the main attractions of this trip is the scenery. It was absolutely fabulous everywhere we went. Every day it seemed to get better. It was pretty amazing all the way through. It's basically just another view of the mountain. Oh, sorry, okay. You want to take over for next day?
Okay. So this is Porto Varas. So this is where we arrived, and as Donal said, we arrived on Saturday. So that afternoon we just kind of walked into town, and then we decided that we weren't meeting the cycling group until 5 p.m. the next day. So we decided to do take advantage and do one of the tours. So so this is on the Sunday. So we did a tour, and the first stop was Llama Farm. It was kind of interesting, and there was some nice viewpoints. So we went there.
So this is basically just a trip that we booked after we arrived. It was like a half-day trip. We just took you around some of the local sites.
As Donal mentioned, this area is covered with beautiful volcanoes. Some that are still active, many that are extinct, and a lot of people actually just come here, to hike and climb the volcanoes. So on this trip, we went to volcano Orsano, which is one of the more famous ones. It's really beautiful because the lake you're seeing it's a lake called Lago Yanquihue, and it's
depending on whether you pronounce it as an Argentinian or Chilean. Seemingly it's spelled the same, but they pronounce it completely differently. It's very confusing.
But it's interesting because we've seen some things that say it's the biggest lake in Chile and some the second, but it's very impressive, and all around the periphery there's volcanoes. So this Orsano looks down to that. So we went up to the volcano, walked up, just had a look around. And then this is at the volcano. Obviously, it's this is a tourist attraction, so there's little eating places.
It's also a ski resort.
Yeah, it's a small ski resort as well. Yeah. And then we went to some falls that are very famous in the area, Petroe Falls, and the water comes down from Orsano, which you can see in the background there, and down into falls, and feeds into one of the other lakes in the area, Todos Los Santos Lake. Also, the thing about all these lakes is that they're just like this beautiful blue color, and it's just really astounding. So it's just really nice to see that. So,
Yeah.
So that was our little day trip.
So this was the start of our actual cycling. So the night before, we met up with the group. We met everybody. We got the bicycles organized. As I say, we just hired bikes from the company, and we didn't make any changes to them. One person on the trip actually brought their own bicycle. Everybody else hired bikes, from the company. But most people brought their own saddles and their own pedals. But we didn't. We just took the bike as it is. So there were off-road bikes, and it had suspension on the front, which it definitely needed. There was a lot of gravel roads and pretty rough terrain.
Can you talk a little bit about the time of year this is, the month of your cold weather? You were wearing a coat in one of the pictures. Could you articulate a little bit about that as you go?
Yeah, so we went in November. So it was spring there, and it was warm. Most days were hot. We had one half day of rain, but it wasn't even heavy rain. It was just light drizzle, and it was warm, so it didn't really matter. So a lot of the cycling was maybe bordering on a little bit too hot. But then when you climbed up, it was obviously colder on the mountains.
So Alan, just we were wearing the coats when we were up on the volcano, and obviously we're at 9,000 feet. The height of Sano is it's about 9,000 feet. So I had my coat on there, but
and it was very windy on top as well.
Yeah. But one thing that we do need to say, so this was let's see, it was like the 18th of November, and I think we were quite lucky with the weather. I think we'd heard that the group, the trip that had run before we arrived, so sort of started 2 weeks before we started, it had a lot of rain. So, so I think, we were fortunate that we were warned that it could rain, but as Donal said, we just had one morning of rain.
Yeah. Well, it is the Lake District, so, you're going to have to expect some water.
Right.
On the day before we met everybody, we actually went for dinner in a restaurant, and we noticed that there were some tourists around, and we found out afterwards there were actually people on our trip. But we were kind of looking over, thinking, are they, aren't they? But we didn't actually go and talk to them.
And it turned out they were thinking the same. So that was funny. When we started this ride, we were going around Lake Yankaway, which is is very, very big. And so Donal explained there were 16 riders, and we had 2 guides. Both were Argentinian. One always stayed in front on a bike, and one was in a van behind. There was also a driver in the van. So it was really well done. But
at the very start, the very first section we rode for about a mile was along by a railway track, and it was very, very rough and bumpy, and we had never really ridden off-road before, and we thought, it is like this, we're giving up, we're going home.
Really big
we couldn't manage it at all. We kept falling off and going really slowly. So luckily it was only just that first mile, and then we got back onto a relatively smooth road, and it was okay after that.
Okay, so this is probably just after we came off the really big, and there were big boulders, and I was just thinking this is going to be too much, but luckily, and that was because they wanted to give us a shortcut, to get to start a ride rather than having to go all the way around the lake. So this day, which was the first full day of riding, it was
almost exclusively on the road.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and we were just basically hugging roads that went around hugging the lake. So this was the view for pretty much most of the day. It was really, really nice.
There's a lot of photos of people in water. See, anywhere we got near the water, everybody basically jumped in because it was hot and it was nice to get into the water and cool down.
This day was, just to give you an idea of some of the mileage, the total cycling for this day was 47 miles. And of that, 4 miles, approximately 4 miles was gravel paths. So that's when the suspension and the big chunky tyres came in handy. But that's typical, that sort of percentage was typical of most days of, off-road, road, paved road.
We stopped every like 12, 15 miles. We had snacks, tea and biscuits and fruit. The fruit was really good.
Yeah. So there would, like in the morning, the first stop would typically be something like this, where Herman and Diego, the guides, would stop and set up this table. And then, there'd be a lunch stop, and that could be picnic or it could be a small restaurant. And then there'd be typically one more stop before we got to our destination. All the places we were cycling are quite small, so there aren't, you're not going to see we don't see lots of restaurants, didn't see lots of people and things like that. So this was really good that they did this, and they always provided, like Donal said, really good snacks and things.
Okay, and this is just on the road around the lake.
Just want to say one of the volcanoes in the area is pretty amazing. It's called Tronadar, and it's actually about 11,500 feet. It's an extinct volcano, so it's a very popular destination for hikers. So it's pretty scenic. But there was a couple of others, sort of well-known volcanoes around here. One called Cabuco, of course Orsano, which we pointed out before. Puntiagudo. So it's just really, really spectacular.
So this, on the first day when we got to our hotel, we just dropped all our gear, and we were told there was a little swimming area nearby. So most of the people walked to this, and we went for a swim. Although I didn't get in because it was too cold.
Yeah, the one thing is the water's ice cold because it's feeding off the volcanoes. So yeah, if you don't like cold water, it's not very good. But so this is probably the most people we ever saw at any spot, apart from the tour that we did, which was kind of organised by a tour company. This is it. But typically, when we got into the water, it was just our group, the people in our group who wanted to go. So we walked. This was about 2 miles from our hotel, and it's quite a nice walk. So we went there in the evening before dinner. That was nice. And, it stays bright very late. So it's really lovely. So we were actually staying in a place called Puerto Octe. And it's very, like, it's a German town with colonial architecture. And that's very much the theme in the area. So the hotel we stayed in was called the house, like German house. Yeah.
So all the place names and road names and everything were all German. It was very surreal. So this is the reason we put this picture up here is those drinks became basically the drink of the holiday. Every night, everybody had these. They were pisco sours. And it just became a kind of tradition to have at least 4 or 5 of those every night.
Well, some people, yeah, a lot of the English, yeah. So this is a picture of the hotel house. As you can see, it's kind of like the colonial architecture. This was just, and this is just a picture I took inside just to show. It was kind of interesting. It was like done up in a very, very old style, and a real sort of eclectic mix of decoration and seating. But it was nice. It was good. It was, basic, but it was good. One thing is, I think this was the biggest accommodation in the town. Like I say, all these places are very small, and it's actually one reason we picked this trip, because we wanted to kind of go to places that perhaps we wouldn't be able to get to ourselves if ever we cycled in these areas. So, you know, so that was good.
So the next day we continued around the lake, and the plan was we were supposed to stay at another little town that was on the lake, but the hotel we were supposed to stay on was closed for renovation or something. So they actually booked accommodation on top of the mountain, which, well, not quite on top of it, but quite a long way up the mountain. So as well as the normal trip that was planned for that day, we ended up having an extra 8 miles and an extra 4,000 feet of climb at the end of the day, which was quite challenging.
This is just sort of the views before we got to that point, just cycling. This is, you know, I said that sometimes we stopped and we had lunch, just like a picnic on the side of the road. This was actually a little restaurant that we had lunch at, so which was nice. So this picture was taken, as Donal said, so this picture was taken at the base of the volcano Osorno, which was going to be where we're going to cycle next. So everyone was tucking in and building up their energy for the climb ahead.
So this is at the top of the climb. It was definitely a challenge getting up this high. It was very hot, and it was a long continuous climb, but it was worth it when you got to the top. There was some great views, and so we celebrated when we made it to the summit.
So what was the distance of this climb, Donal, altogether? Like about?
So for the whole day, we did about 7,000 feet of climb, but there was a 4,000 foot climb in the last 8 miles.
And just so you know, I didn't actually make it to the top. I think about half the groups out of 16, half of us did and half of us didn't. But it was really nice because what happened was, so the van stayed behind the last group, and then as people sort of decided that they'd had enough, they jumped into the van and they gave us water and things. So I think I got about halfway, which I was quite happy with. Yeah. But it was definitely a challenge, and like Donal said, it was a hot day, but it was great fun. I just, the whole day ended up being about 58 miles of cycling with this, so I was fine doing half of it.
This is where we stayed, which is like I think it's part of a ski lodge, and it just had accommodation. So it was very basic.
Yeah. So if you recall, this is the same. So Osorno is the same volcano that we visited when we did the trip, but at the time we did the trip, we didn't know that this was going to be, you know, somewhere we'd be going to, because as Donal said, it was a change to the itinerary. But it was good anyway, because this was a different side of the mountain, so you know, it was all fun.
Was this the van that you rode in?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So they could put the bikes up on top.
But you said there were 16 people. So were there two vans, or you all fit in that van?
We all fit in that van. It was a bit of a squeeze, but we did.
Okay.
Well, and Alan, also when we did a couple, just two sort of. Well, we did one journey that was sort of a couple of hours. I think they changed the van out because
they had a minibus.
Yeah, they had a minibus for that. So this was more, you know, the chances of all of us being in here at any one time wasn't very high, because it was only if you were going to be picked up by the SAG van. Whenever there was a bit of a journey, they changed out. So yeah.
So that was another good thing. You always had the option of just stopping, and the van would pick you up. Or if you had any punctures or anything, you stopped and the van would come along and fix it. That was quite a good thing.
So this just sort of in front of the accommodation, there was a beautiful hot tub that was actually powered with, you know, wood. It was natural and it was really nice. So
no chlorine in the water.
No, yeah.
It was heated up by a wooden fire. It took a long time to heat it up, but it was really good.
So what happened was, so we asked, you know, we told them that we'd like to do that, and so about 8 of us between us, we did this. Not everybody in the group did it, but I was lucky to get, you know, to get to go in that. So it was really lovely. The water was just really nice, and the views were spectacular. You can see we were there just as at sunset. So that was really, really nice.
So this is the next morning. So we woke up to find that we were looking down on the clouds. So we got up on our bikes and we actually cycled down into a cloud, which was definitely a first for us, but it was pretty amazing. So we had that 4,000-foot descent the next morning, which was quite nice. Although it was a bit chilly at the top until we got down a bit and got the sun came out and warmed it up. So this is just a stop on the way.
So this morning, the plan was we're going to actually do 2 boats this day. So we were cycling to a place called Puerto Blest, which was actually in Argentina.
So we had to cross over the border.
Yeah. So we started off, so as Donal said, we cycled down Orsano and we cycled to a point where we took this catamaran for the first part of our journey. And that took us onto the Argentina side.
It took us over to, we got off, then we got back on the bikes and we cycled over the border on our bikes. So this is just a view of the lake. And this is the road that actually we crossed the border on. And it was basically right over the top of a mountain. It was a long, steep climb on gravel roads. And then right at the very top was the actual border. So this was the top of the hill. But there was no border post here. So we didn't come to the border post until we got back down on the other side of the hill.
So this is it. So and this is very interesting. So this is where we were going through customs, and it was a really good experience because the way it worked was there was one customs officer, and we actually went into his house, and when we went in, he was sitting eating a meal at a table, very formal, and he was watching TV at the same time. So we went in one at a time and sat with him, and one of the guides did us, and he kind of just didn't take his eyes off his meal, and it became a joke to see who could guess what the film was, because it was like an old American film. So that was interesting. I haven't done a border crossing like that before.
So this was the second boat to take us on the next part of the journey. And we passed this waterfall on the boat, which is quite spectacular. This is Monica showing off.
Happy just to have got through customs then.
Yes. So this is the hotel we stayed at the next night. This is actually the nicest accommodation we had, and it's completely like basically cut off. So you almost, I think the only way of getting here is by boat. So it's very, very isolated, but it's a really beautiful hotel.
It had a really nice spa, which we all enjoyed, a nice swimming pool and hot tub, which was good to relax the. Okay.
So this was the view from the hotel room. Quite nice. So this is the next morning. So we were lucky when we were actually in the hotel. We were basically the only people there. There's nobody around. So the next morning, when we were going to get on the boat to go on the next part of our journey, all these people were arriving. So it was good. We had a place to ourselves while we were there. It worked out well.
And today our destination, we had a short cycling day this day, just 15 miles of cycling, and we were heading to a place called Bariloche, which is quite a well-known tourist destination in Argentina. It's the chocolate capital of Argentina, so I was excited about that. But so
it's one of the biggest towns in the whole area. Yeah. Again, this is on the boat. So this bird flew along beside the boat quite a long time, and then he decided to stop for a rest. And this is just one of the views. So it was kind of a little up and down road, but the views on the way from when we got off the boat until we got to our destination were absolutely incredible. Really, really pretty. This is a very well traveled route. So there's a lot of holidays that just do this part of this section, not cycling, but like on buses. So a lot of people do this trip.
We had to get in the water again. Yes. With the first opportunity.
Okay, some pretty flowers.
So now this is actually called Baje Serena, and it's which is Serena Bay, Serenity Bay, and it was really spectacular. And so as soon as we got off the boat, we were sort of climbing to get up to this point, and then we cycled round to go into Bariloche. But it was just really, really lovely. And as Donal said, this is a destination. There was a couple of little stalls here selling things and. Some tourists, but again, nothing was crowded though. Like you can see, there's not a lot of people around, even though this was a busy point. So it was all really lovely and very spoiled. So
this view out onto the Andes was just beautiful. Obviously, it's like everything else. Pictures don't really do it justice, but when you're actually there looking at it, it's really, really spectacular. So this is just a few of the vendors who are along that road.
In the background.
So this is the next day. So this was a rest day. So we had a free day in Bariloche. It's because it's one of those places that there's a lot of things to do. It's a very, very touristy place. A lot of Argentinians go for their holidays there. And the season was just starting, so it was coming into the summer. So there was a wide variety of things to do. A lot of people did different things. We decided to go for a hike on it was one of the largest ski resorts in South America. And it's just outside Bariloche. So we actually went for a hike in that area.
And it's called Cathedral Alta Patagonia. So you're not actually in Patagonia here. You're just sort of on the edge of Patagonia, but the scenery is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, we got to the top. There was some great views.
So I think 6 of us went together to do this, and it was just really nice. It was interesting when we were here, because before we left this trip, I wasn't sure. I think I was thinking we're going to be a bit closer to, I don't know, people have heard of Torres del Paine. That's the big destination where people go to climb. And we did meet people who were on their way down there, but it's hundreds of miles from here. But the whole scenery is very, very impressive.
I think people did some practicing here before they went down. Some very rugged terrain. So this is looking down on the ski resort, and the town is in the bottom of the valley. Sorry.
So the hiking. So you've got my little bicycle on my bag there, just to remember that we're on a bike trip. So, we told you it was the chocolate capital of Argentina. So in the evening, after we got back from the hike, we went and ate, and then we went back to the hotel and changed, and then we headed into the town. And this is like now 10 o'clock that evening, and this is one of the places called Mamushka. It's one of the sort of well-known places to go and have a nice hot chocolate and coffee and things. So that's what we did. Had to be done.
So almost everywhere we went, the guides would kind of give us some advice on, good places to go or good things to see. So this is the next day. This is the only day we had a bit of rain. So in the morning, you see everybody's kitted up for the wet weather, but it only lasted a couple of hours and it didn't really cause any problems.
Yeah, so our destination this day was a place called San Martin de los Andes, and again, another sort of well-known holiday town for locals. It was really beautiful as well. But this day was basically just, it was a long slog. It was 57 miles with quite a lot of climb, just going, it seemed like we just went up and up and up. for miles. But it was really beautiful. And as Donal said, this is the first stop. It had been raining. By the time we got to the first stop, though, like by this point, it stopped raining, and then it was fine the rest of the time. We didn't actually have a lot of photos. It was really scenic, but I think it was just, I had my head down anyway the whole time. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing about this day was the last 7 miles, I think, 7 or 8 miles.
Oh yeah,
which
it was a long downhill into the town, which everybody really enjoyed.
Yeah. So this is the next day, and this was actually another rest day in San Martin, but they had organised a ride, which in the end, I think, about 10 or 12 people in the group chose to do, and Donal and I did it. The destination was going to be a beach where we were going to stop and have a big picnic lunch. That sounded interesting, so we did it. But it was 24 miles, and 6 miles of it was gravel, and it was quite challenging because we basically went over a mountain from San Martin to the destination of the picnic. But this is,
and we came back in a boat, so we didn't have to.
Yeah.
We didn't have to cycle back, which is good.
But this is, when we started ride on the climb, this is looking back down into San Martin. It's really beautiful. It's really lovely.
There's a question about, as you go up the hills, does anybody use e-bikes at all? Do they allow them on the trips? Or?
On this trip, there weren't any. So they weren't really that popular, I think, in 2016. We have, on previous trips after this, we have seen people using them, but nobody on this trip used it.
We actually, we became really good friends. Out of the 16 people on the trip, we were actually, friends in touch with 14 of the people. And we've either met them when we've gone back to the UK, and we did cycle with some of them. And on a trip we did this last year, that one person had an e-bike, and the guy who's the guide there was telling us that they get like half and half on a lot of trips now with e-bikes and non-e-bikes. So I think it's definitely becoming very popular, and definitely something that a lot more people are doing.
So this was the group that so I'll say it was not all of the group, but a lot of the group that just did this day trip.
It's just kind of on the way. We were still on a climb up, but like you see, the views are spectacular. So
this is the beach that we didn't actually, for some reason, didn't take a picture of the actual beach, but this is it's still on the same lake, but it was a good place to swim.
We had a picnic there, spent the afternoon there, and some people came by boat. Some of the people who had chosen not to cycle came by boat to meet us here, so it was nice. We sort of got together.
So this is the next day. We're heading out.
Yeah. So on this day we were cycling. So this is San Martin's in Argentina. We were cycling back to Chile. Our destination was a place called Pucón.
Again, another of the bigger towns in that area. So this lake, we kind of rode around this lake on the way by, and it was just really, really pretty. The lake was so still, and the water was so clear. It was almost like a mirror. It was beautiful.
So just to say that today we did actually transfer by van for a little while before we started this bike ride. And Alan, the van changed at that point. We had a gentleman. So what happened was, because we were so close to Chile, he'd come from Pucón with a bigger van to take us the first bit of this ride. Then we kind of got out and carried on. But we started at a place called the Lanin volcano. And it's part of, this is the Lanin National Park. It was really, really nice. We took this picture. We wanted to show this picture because I don't know if you can see sort of in the distance, but the road ahead, and it was quite the gradient, was quite steep, and it just kind of give you an idea of.
It was rolling hills all day.
It was quite challenging,
especially on mountain bikes. Again, that's just another picture of that lake. And this is when we crossed the border back into Chile.
The crossing here was was adventurous. It was basically more traditional. You know, we all went piled into an office and got through the border. So
One question you have is, was it all couples, all singles? Well, obviously you're a couple, so it wasn't all singles or a mix thereof.
It was a good mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was four.
Yeah. So there was like, it was a good mix, singles, couples. I think Donal's right. There's 4 couples, and then the others, there was some people who'd just come by themselves, and then there was like 3 girls who were friends. These 3 guys from England, and then a girl they knew in Canada joined them. They just cycled on another trip, and then others were just people who'd just come on their own and didn't know anybody. So
we were a bit worried before the trip that it would be all 20-year-olds and they would all be going at 100 miles an hour. But actually, most of the people on the trip were kind of our age, so it worked out well. It was a group of 4 or 5 people that were maybe in the 30s, but everybody else was kind of somewhere around our age.
Up to I'd say up to like late 60s.
Yeah.
So it was a real mix, and so I think there was, and the other thing was you had a choice if you're by yourself, obviously, to have single room, and sometimes they doubled up, but I think it was just very nice. So everybody sort of got on really well.
Yeah.
But real mix.
So this was a wigwam that was just out in the middle of nowhere. I'm not quite sure why.
But we cycled around here. It's kind of. That's the small van again, Alan. So the small van followed us behind. The bigger van would just, when it picked us up and took us to start this ride, then went on into Pucon. So, because the road, there's a bigger road. And then we put this picture here just to sort of give you a close-up of the bikes. This is my bike, so it's quite small, but.
The one good thing is it was the disc brakes, and that's the first time I'd used disc brakes, and I found them really, really good. It makes such a difference, especially in the very long descents. It worked out really well. And again, on the gravel roads, the front suspension was good as well. Yeah, made a big difference.
So, as we said, the destination was Pucon. Pucon's quite well known, and actually, I found out, once we were on the trip, that a lot of people had specifically chosen this bike trip because we were going to Pucon. Because one of the big things to do in Pucon is to climb the volcano Villarrica, which you see in front of you.
It's one of the most active volcanoes in South America.
So, so this was a rest day, and obviously they have that because they know a lot of people are interested in this climb. So I decided to join them. So the night before, we went and we got fitted with boots and equipment. There was just 10 of us were allowed. There was only room for 10 people. This has become, it's a very popular thing to do, but it's very regulated by the government. So, there's only a certain number of people who can go, and you have to start very early because you've got to come back. You're going to be back down before a certain time.
You have to have a guide.
Yeah. There's a law, there's going to be 1 guide for every 4 people. So we actually had 3 guides. So we started off very early. So like I said, it was 10 of us who did this. And it was very challenging. But I found it very challenging. It's a long, it's like 3 miles is the distance approximately to the top. And you sort of go in this formation of just going, you can see other groups on the volcano as well, just kind of going back and forth, but it was really good fun. You're carrying a lot of stuff, that backpack, I weighed it and it was like, 15 pounds. So it's quite good, but it was a great experience. So this is just a picture of me looking a bit disheveled on the way up. And this is at the top. It's really spectacular. And that's Villarrica Lake that you see in the background. And you actually get to walk up to the top and look into the crater. It's kind of interesting. I was thinking about it after, there's no barriers or anything, but you kind of look in. Can't stay up there very long because there's a very strong smell of sulfur, but it's very impressive. And then on the way down, what happens is you walk down the first part and you actually slide on these little trays that were in our backpacks most of the way. So that's really good fun as well. So it's a lot easier to get down and go up, but that's quite an experience and something I'm glad I did.
So while Monica was climbing up that, I went on a hike there's a national park nearby. So I could see the mountain from there. And this is one of the friends I made on the hike. This thing was about the same size as my hand. And this was a beautiful lake that was hidden up in the mountains.
So a few questions for you one is about altitude, excuse me. One is about what were the bikes like? Maybe you could wait for that until you get back to biking. And then did they give you good advice on what kind of clothing to bring? I mean, there was snow.
Yeah. So first question on the altitude.
Yeah, so I mean, we never went like very high. I think probably the highest we went was maybe like 6,000 feet, something like that. So altitude wasn't really a problem. It was a little bit cold when we got on the morning when we were cycling down off the volcano. But apart from that, it was really warm. They basically gave us a list of everything to take. So that's snow. You're saying that was an optional trip that you could take to hike up the mountain, but we never had anything. When we were cycling, it was warm all the time. We didn't have any cold weather at all.
They told us to prepare for rain, so we had they told us to bring a raincoat, and they gave us quite an extensive list. Like literally down to bring 6 pairs of socks, bring this, bring that. So I would say, to answer the person's question, it was very good. They gave us a lot of good advice. Just to be on the climb that I did, that coat that I have, that isn't my coat. All the equipment for the climb, the trousers, like I don't have them on there, but we had like waterproof trousers, the helmet, everything was provided by the company with the hike through, the backpack. So that wasn't the only thing that I'm wearing that's my own is obviously the underclothes, and my even the boots were provided. So we didn't have to prepare for that because, like Donal said, that was an optional trip. But for the cycling itself, I think apart from that one day where we wore, raincoats for the start of riding, and when we obviously went to the mountain, we had those.
Yeah, and we had 2 opportunities to get things washed. So on the days where we stayed in the hotel 2 nights in a row, it was possible to get all your clothes washed and get them back to you next day.
And also, we just hand washed things as well. Other people did too in between.
There was a question if you know the name of the insect that was the size of your hand.
I have absolutely no idea. It was just a really big spider.
So after the day in Pucón, the rest day, we were then, our next destination was a place called Cunco. This day's riding was about 43 miles and 6 miles of gravel. So we actually, at the start of this ride, so I've got to say, so from Pucón, we actually took the van again to a place called Villarrica, same name as the volcano, and then started a ride from there. And from there, it was 43 miles. This was kind of like, this day was just like a long flats, slight rolling hills, not as challenging as some days, but another beautiful day. And this is actually, that road is actually the main road from Pucón to Pucón. And as you can see, we didn't even really encounter a lot of traffic.
No. The roads were perfect for cycling on. Yeah. There was very, very low amount of traffic. And the surfaces were pretty good.
And that night we stayed in this hotel, Cabana Camping Hostel. And we didn't camp, we actually stayed in these
the little log cabins.
Yeah, it was really nice. So the next day, we were heading to a national park, the Conyigo National Park. Sorry, Conyigo National Park. It's a really, is it one of sort of the biggest? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's very remote.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful volcanic. It's basically seen as a really big volcanic eruption. I think like maybe 20, 30 years ago.
So this is just on the way cycling there. We stopped.
This is where we stopped for lunch, and they had a pool and a hot tub. Some people ventured in.
I didn't swim this one, but some people did. But it was just really lovely. So so on the way out to national parks, we stopped here, and then actually we stopped here again the next day. But this is just on the way into the national park. This is
this is one of the tallest volcanoes in the area. I said there was a pretty big explosion here, you know, within the last 30, 40 years. It's just some scenery on the way in.
Yeah, you can see there's a lot of volcanic activity in the area. So all the roads into the park were just like a lot of black rock, black ash like this.
And it was completely desolate. We didn't see another person the whole time we were there. It was just, at some points you were cycling along, you would think you were the only person in the world. It was just, you could see for miles and miles and it was nothing. You can just see it. It's just, again, this is just kind of the start of the season, so it was very, very quiet.
Just to tell you that volcano that you saw, that we had a picture of, the Lamia volcano. It's one of the most active volcanoes in South America, and it actually is only one of few that have an active lava lake within the crater. So that was
There's one of the guys that's playing around with his camera. So this was our accommodation for the night. So we actually had that whole little house to ourselves.
There's lots of little houses like this scattered in the area, but this is the only place in the park to stay at this park, you know, and it was just our group was here, you know, and it was very like eco-friendly. It was a big thing about that in the park. It was really nice.
Was there any concern about being too close to an active volcano, and was there a distinctive, memorable fragrances on this trip?
So actually, going back to Villarica, so the night after Monica climbed it, we were in the hotel about 3 o'clock in the morning, and all the sirens went off. And we obviously presumed it was like a fire siren, so we went out into the hallway and there was nothing happening. Nobody went around, so we assumed it was a false alarm, and we just went back to bed. The next morning, we found out that people on the other side of the hotel could see the volcano, and there was like a large eruption going on, and there was like red, you know, flames shooting out of the top of the volcano, and that's the reason that the alarm went off.
Yeah. So were we concerned? No, we didn't really think about it, but I was just happy that I'd managed to do the hike, because then there was no hiking on the volcano for the next 3 or 4 days. And after we spoke to people who'd been to that area, and they said that they'd gone, you know, for the hike and ended up having to wait a few days. So were we worried? No. I mean, they didn't actually say anything about concerns. I think we were far enough away from being in any imminent danger.
And we lived in the Northwest for a long time, so we're used to volcanoes.
Pacific Northwest. And Alan, what was the second question, sorry?
Were there any distinctive fragrances, smells?
Oh,
the fruits were
yeah,
beautiful, and like the smell, like in the mornings when you get breakfast, you would get these really beautiful fruits that I can't even remember what some of them were. But the smell from them was really, really nice.
It was interesting because I think that was more prominent than the flowers and things on the way, you know, in the fauna. So maracuya's quite big there, so that, you know, that smell, and then different berries. Yeah, we're terrible. We can't remember, but it was. I think the biggest thing was it just felt very, very fresh. You know, the air just is really crisp and clean.
When you were near the active volcano, were there any scents related to that?
Oh yes.
Yes, yeah. So, you know, when we went climbing the volcano, we actually had like a little mask in our. It's very, very it's topical now, but we had like a mask that, you know, we were given and told to put on because there was a very strong smell of sulfur, and it was very overpowering at the top. So when we got to the top, you know, they didn't want us to stay there too long anyway, but you couldn't. It was just very, very overpowering. And I'd say that, you know, for the first quarter of a mile walking back down from that, you could smell it, and going up to that. So yeah, definitely. So this is like kind of like the communal area, and you know, the accommodation we stayed in the national park, and this was just chilling. So So we'd cycled into the park, we spent the night there, then the next day we cycled back, basically the same, pretty much the same way we came, and we were heading back to Kunko, the place where we'd stopped the day before.
And this is our last day of cycling.
Yeah, this is actually the end of the ride. It's just some pictures of...
This is starting out in the morning. So this is a beautiful lake that's in the area, and we actually took us a couple of mile detour on the bikes just to get to this, and it's like a sunken forest. So again, this was left over from the last eruption. It moved the whole scenery around. So what used to be a forest kind of is now a lake, but it was really beautiful.
And it was actually called Rainbow Lake, and the Spanish name was Arcoria, I think, which is rainbow. But anyway, it was really lovely. So
again, the scenery the next day was obviously very similar. You can see the volcanic landscape. And
just to give you an idea of the size of this, so the cycle into the park the previous day and this day was about 26 miles. I mean, there was a little bit of a section, obviously, that we weren't on this, but pretty much most of it was like this. Yeah.
This is just a different lake. So this was near the end of of our trip, and Monica was trying to get a picture of me. I was trying to avoid it, but she got me in the end.
And that was the end. It's funny, we didn't take a picture together, but this is at the end of the trip. So we ended up back at the hotel the place we'd had lunch the day before in Kunko that we had a picture of the swimming pool and things, but this was it. So we had lunch there. And then the plan was then we were going to be taken by a bus to a place called Temuco, which was going to be the end of our trip. So sort of a bigger town in Chile. So, we got here, had lunch, packed up all the bikes. Do you want to just talk about the bikes just quickly for a minute?
Yeah.
Somebody asked.
So all the hire bikes were basically the same. So you could just decide which size you wanted. And there were all these off-road bikes. The tires were probably around 40 mil or something like that. And they had front and back disc brakes. And they were pretty sturdy. They weren't light, but they were ideal for the conditions, and they were well maintained. So I don't think anybody had any breakdowns.
No, we didn't have anything. And just the lady, we told you, so there was a lady called Nadine who actually is from Florida, and she's a massive cyclist. She actually organises her own trips to places, in different parts of the world. She came on a road bike and she wasn't able to cycle some of the...
She struggled in some of the
parts. She had to get into the van in some places, not because she couldn't, do the cycling, but just because her bike couldn't handle it. I'm not sure if she just didn't, why she didn't realise that. She was actually going to cycle the whole distance back again after we finished the trip. So, she definitely wanted a light bike. She was a very good cyclist, but again, the road bike wasn't suitable for all parts of this. So, this is just a picture when we got to Temuco. So we got off the bikes. All the bikes were packed and taken away. We were in a van going to our destination last night, and we just took a picture of this because this was in the hotel when we arrived in Temuco. It wasn't a cycling hotel specifically hotel, but it just had that. So this is the last day of the trip, and this is the day that everybody was flying out from. Back to respective destinations. But our flight wasn't until 8 o'clock that evening. So Donal found out about a
we had a whole
national park, in this area. So this is one of the pictures. We went up to the national park that day in the morning.
And this just we just a little walking tour of the town by ourselves. And this is at the airport. So most of the group had left before us because their flights were scheduled much earlier. But when we got to the airport, they were all sitting there because what actually happened was a light aircraft crashed on the runway. sometime during the day, and it just the whole airport just closed for the whole day. And when we got there, they had been already sitting there for hours, and we got there and we sat there for more hours. So the airport didn't open until like probably 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So we missed our connection. So we were supposed to, fly out of Santiago that evening. We just had like an hour or something changeover, and we missed the flight completely. We didn't get there till like 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that.
Yeah. So Temuco to Santiago was only like an hour and a half's flight. So as Donal said, we found out, we missed our connection from Santiago back to New York. So by the time we got there, it was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. But the bonus of that was we got an unexpected day in Santiago. So, got to...
It worked out well.
Yeah, because we were booked on the same flight the following evening that we'd missed that night. So we just got like a couple of pictures from Santiago. We did a walking tour. Some of the people on the trip had actually been to Santiago on the way out, so they advised this walking tour. But we just wanted to take this just to show you the bike share system that they have there. And this is the centre. There's a beautiful cathedral in the centre of the city. This is part of the area we went to. They told us about this really good food market by the cathedral to go and have this really good fish stew. So we went there, I had the fish stew, and then we kind of joined the walking tour. Just a couple of pictures. It's a really nice city. I mean, it's bustling. I'm not sure if I'd like to cycle around it too much.
No, definitely not.
But it was really nice. And
a lot of traffic.
A lot of sculptures, really beautiful sculptures and architecture. Just really nice. This was, I put this in here. This is a famous sculpture that represents 4 countries, Chile, Argentina, and I don't remember the other 2. I need to look this up. I tried to find it, but I couldn't find it in the book, so I should do that. And there was just a lot of,
There's a lot of brilliant murals all the way around the city. And this one was like obviously quite a large building.
There's another one. Yeah, so it was something we weren't expecting, but we had a nice day.
So that's the end of the pictures. Any questions?
That's amazing. So now we know we can go and do a graffiti ride, South American style.
That's right.
All right. If anybody has any parting questions, let us know. But this is excellent. You filled the hour and are in a timely way. You're getting a lot of thank yous. Beautiful. Sarit says. And did you train for the ride? Did you?
No, we should have.
So
we regretted not training when we got there, but it was fine. Actually, there were a very wide range of cycling abilities on the trip. There was a couple of people that were doing Ironman and were really top class cyclists. And there was one person who just refused to cycle up any hill. So as soon as we came to the hill, she just got into the van.
Yeah, and she's the friend who on our trip we just did in November had the e-bike. She just decided that was that. But one thing I was going to say, Alan, is we joined the 5 Borough Bike Club 5 years ago. We did this trip 4 years ago. We did a few rides. We did a few weekend rides. But Donal, we used to live in Portland, Oregon, and Donal did a lot of cycling. So I think he's just got that, ability. I think I ran a little bit. So I think it would be, I think anybody, members of our club would have no problem. If I can do it, any of you can do it. So
yes.
They want to know also what the total mileage was in the end that you did.
Yeah. We did have right now.
So it was averaging probably around 40 miles a day when we were cycling.
Yeah. So I think it was close to 400.
Yeah.
About 400 miles. Yeah, we should made a note of that and told you. But yeah.
Yeah. Ken Coughlin's thanking you. He's saying it's a part of the world he'd never even considered biking in. Usually,
we would definitely recommend it. It was it's really beautiful.
People, it's interesting because people are very friendly and they're very open to the bikes, and we never had any situations where we felt intimidated or on that ride. Some of those rides we got separated, the cyclists, and I was always sort of like in the second half towards the back, and I'd be cycling on my own. I never felt afraid, you know, there was nobody around. And of course, you know, there's somebody right at the very back, but there'd be stretches like, you know, a mile, 2 miles where I wouldn't really see anybody, even anybody else in the group. So we'd highly recommend the, you know, cycling in the area. Very beautiful.
And even if you go to some of the small places we went through, if you went along the road, children would like wave at you going by and, you know, shout hi to you. And so people were very friendly.
Had you been climbing the one that that erupted? That's one of the questions they just asked.
Yeah. So we were staying in the town of Pucón, and that's where Villarrica, that was the one I climbed, and that was the one that erupted the following evening. And you know, when we went, so then we arrived in Pucón the day before the climb, and you know, we asked, you know, whoever wants to climb, there's 10 spots. Luckily that was fine, other people didn't want to do it, so everybody who wanted to was able to. And when we went and we had like the training and the briefing and got fitted with the boots and given all the bags and things, they did warn us that, you know, there's no guarantee that by morning we'd be able to do the climb. It was very, you know, if anything happened, but we were just fortunate because, like I say, that evening there was a small eruption and all climbs were cancelled for the next few days.
Great. Did the ride leaders give you, you know, tourist information during the trip and recommend food options and things like that? Was there?
Yes. Yeah. They were very good. They basically do this trip through the whole season, all the time. So they knew all the best places to go, best places to eat.
They were really nice, and they were paid a lot of attention to detail. You know, if anybody needed anything. And one thing is, most of the meals were included, so there was only on the days where we had rest days did we actually go and get our own dinners. So, you know, we didn't do that. And I've got to say, like, Donal's very good when we've subsequently done a few other trips like this. He does a lot of research, so, you know, we had a lot of information. But yes, if you went, you know, with nothing, they had enough. They had a book we could look at, and they told us. And they were both, you know, as I said, they're both Argentinians, but spoke great English, so we're able to, you know, explain everything to us.
That's great. Now, for those of you who came late, you know, for what you missed, you will see this posted on the website probably tomorrow or the next day. Just to remind you all that every program we've had, I record, put it up on our YouTube site, and then link to it from the article that announces it on the website. So definitely catch it because it was worth watching. Thank you again so much. To remind everybody, next Wednesday we're having the first aid class. And then either next Thursday or the Thursday after, we're going to shift Friday night at the movies to Thursday night. And we're going to have, hopefully, Chris DeMayo talking about how to set yourself up for a self-contained camping type trip or riding out from New York City to places of interest in the area. So he'll talk about how to outfit a bike so you can ride self-contained. And then I am looking for other suggestions. So if you know somebody that has a story like this to tell, put them in touch with me, okay? So with that, what I'll do for the next 30 seconds is I'm going to unmute everybody and ask you to give a big hand. Thank you. You did a great job.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you all
much.
for taking time to join.
Thanks, Monica and Donal.
Good night, everybody. Stay healthy. Stay strong.
Thank you, Alan.